Welcome back to My Hero Academia Anime Review episode number 88. Yep, 12 more to go before I reach episode 100 for this interview series. Though, in the case of the way it's going right now, because of the fact the anime, as of this episode, well, of course, talking episode 109, with only 5 episodes left to go, my guess is I'll probably do the 100th episode review for this series, probably when I talk about for the manga. That's probably what's going to happen. Probably yes. Now, this episode adapts from chapter 218, pages 9 through 11, though there's still about 4 pages of the thing to adapt. Yeah, believe it or not, 4 pages, because for 218, this is basically first time since episode 100. They've gone back to this particular chapter, and they have fewer pages of it, but they still have not covered pages 4 through 8. I'm hoping to adapt those to the later points. In the case of the rest of them, basically for 224, they cover pretty much the rest of that chapter, the entirety of 225, 226, most of 227 except for a few pages, and 228. For 227, they skip pages 4, 5, and 8. There's a lot of stuff happened in this episode where you had the League of Villains arriving at the small town, basically. What is the name of this place? Deca City. But before that, the episode starts off with basically kind of the origin of the Meta Liberation Army, where a lot of people were not very satisfied with the Quark stuff, the way the government was pushing it. So I guess they figured they'll have this guy called Destro, the original one, the one father of Re-Destro, where he forms the Meta Liberation Army to oppose the current policy that the Japanese government is opposing on people when it comes to quarks. And of course, he tried to revolt against that. He failed. He got arrested. He wrote a book, the Meta Liberation Army book, which has been popping up throughout the whole series. And then he committed suicide before. And here's the thing: he never knew he had a son. Nope, never did. And that kind of basically explains the origin of how the Meta Liberation Army came together. Which, it's very small and brief. Nothing really wrong with that. And we cut to the present day, where the League of Villains are arriving at Deca City, where they meet up with a particular guy who's... Let me try and see what his name is. Yeah, well, first they come across Slide and Go. He, of course, has not been seen since episode 100. Actually, scratch it. He actually seen once prior to this. Where... And, of course, Spinner points out, though, that this is a guy he doesn't really recognize, even though he's a hero. Excuse me. Which, that is definitely true, given the fact this guy plays a very minor role in the manga. This guy does practically nothing. So, they introduce him to the leader of the Hearts and Minds Party. His name is Kota Hinba, who actually is a member of the Meta Liberation Army. Yep. And apparently he's a politician. That's probably why the fact that he was probably like that. So, and apparently, here's the thing. I know I'm going to take a break. Basically, I'm trying to clear my throat here. Mr. Compress recognizes him, and of course, Dobby's like, "Is he so important?" And before he can explain it, they start attacking. Yep. And before I continue, there's a brief scene at where Redestra is, where the broker is basically explaining to him, you basically did made 2 mistakes. One, using an old man as a damsel in distress. It's a slight difference, basically, what they have in the manga. And 2, basically, you're about to face the might of Nemus. And of course, Redestra counters that with his own argument, saying that no one has seen Nemus since... Well, from the perspective of the viewer, no one's seen them since the Pro Hero arc from the last season, so they've not been active for quite some time. And of course, they do bring up stuff with some flashback, like Dabi went after to retrieve one Nemu, because the fact they're actually short on supply of Nemus, so they basically just like recycle them. That's best the way he says it. And so after this, we have Skeptic coming in. Yes, Skeptic, where he points out some stuff basically during the course of the arc, during the course of this episode. He basically, in a way, kind of narrates basically to show what exactly is going on here. So League of Villains attacked by various people. We have Toga being attacked by Curiosity, who wants to interview her. By the way, the actual chapter this thing happens in is the chapter title is called "Interview with a Vampire." I'm not kidding about that. That is seriously in the title, because they imply that Toga's a vampire. So she might try to take on, like, she even tries using her own. I'm trying to think here. Oh yeah, she actually tries multiple times, tries to stab her, and she goes to a store. Lots of explosions because apparently everything she touches basically turns into a landmine. Yep. And then of course she's able to kind of beat Curiosity. Well, simply also because, well, first before that, she tries to take some blood of some people from the real life army, but basically she composes them so she can get away. Nope, they become suicide bombers. They explode, and apparently they have no problem becoming suicide bombers for the cause. That's basically how it is. Then pretty much with that, like, she decides to inject herself with she needs some blood to drink, so she drinks somebody's blood from a pack. Whose blood is it? Ochaku's blood, and basically her face becomes Ochaku. And then apparently, while talking to people, she realizes, oh crap, she just leveled up, where she has Ochaku's ability. She does in the manga too, so don't worry about that. The anime did not make this up. So everything in this group starts floating, and then of course part of the little mass is flowing away, and she says she was going to say this for later on, because she actually took some of the blood from Ochaku back during the pro license exam arc from back in season 3 of the anime, which kudos for the fact that they actually made a nod to that. So we get plenty of references to particular arcs, which is so good. So she basically at the time of the air, she just does this, and everybody falls directly to the ground. And it's implied off screen she just kills everybody. We kind of also get partial backstory for her, where she basically was a normal girl growing up. And then after middle school, she changed, where she basically stabbed a classmate of hers, and according to one of the people who saw it, she was later seen taking a straw and drinking the man's blood like she was drinking a soda. Yeah, I know that's kind of sick, but that's basically the type of woman Toga is. And also, apparently, she was also biting at a bird she wanted to keep, because she has an obsession with blood. Yes, she's got an obsession with blood, because it's part of her character. And of course, she's got fangs. Her parents complain to her that she should act like a normal girl. Why is she like this? Because it's basically it's part of her personality, the heck that she's like this. And of course, Curiosity is wondering, like, how the heck she become insane? And of course, Toga's like, I've always been this way. The fact that the whole nice girl thing that she had was all an act. Yep, all an act. It's just a mask you just put on. And then we see Spinner basically transplants people. Dabi fights a guy who used ability of ice. We see Mr. Compressed having a tough time. He's probably the only one who has the toughest time. As for Shigaraki, he's simply just walking, getting sleepy, has a vision of his late grandmother for some reason, even though he doesn't realize this actually is his grandmother. But viewer perspective, yeah, it's his grandmother. And of course, he hops on the wall, hops on top of the wall, and then he just basically barely touches these group of people, and they all turn to ash. And Spinner basically points out, though, each turns people to ash just simply by barely touching them. So basically, both Toga and Shigaraki basically got a power up. After Toga took out Curiosity, she just was wandering down an alleyway, and then she ended up in a shed. Which I should point out, though, she actually been in that shed for a few chapters before she was finally found by Twice, who had to flee his own battle in order to get her. And he finds her, and we have this like multiple thing where he's basically just talking back and forth to himself over Toga, and the fact that also his mask is starting to be removed, and of course this is being narrated by a skeptic to Redestro. And pretty much we have like a lot set up for basically for next week related to more Toga stuff. Now, from what I can tell, one person did point out though for this episode that some of Toga stuff was actually cut from this episode. I look at the chapter, I'm like, no, none of Toga stuff was cut from this episode. It was mostly the guy who was leader of. It's the guy whose codename was Trumpet. His stuff was cut from the episode, not Toga's. This definitely was a good episode. It's got good pacing with it. I like the music. There's not much for music. There's a good amount of music for this episode, but maybe should have umped up a little bit more. Possibly, yes. I know basically one guy criticized I should do some editing, but the thing is, I don't know how to edit. Honest to God, I don't. I'm trying to think what else. Is there anything I don't like about this episode? Not really. I can't think of anything I don't like. Because I have thoroughly enjoyed My Hero Academia, watching it since I watched the first episode back in 2018, even though the anime has been on the air since 2016. Yep. Oh, and here's something, though, that, well, with the episode, they kind of basically almost finished up dubbing the chapters in here, though basically 2:18, so got a little bit left. This one, they finally started this one. Though they kind of partially adapted one of the chapters already for the series. Yes, they adapted already 234. They adapted for an early on episode for the Endeavor arc, and now we're going to focus on basically all about the villains arc. And from what I can tell by the most recent episode, they're almost done adapting this arc. And by that point, there's only 4 chapters left to go for that arc. I'm like, cool. But knowing how this anime works, they're probably going to stretch this out by that point. So, in the case of basically what I'm looking forward to, more stuff here. And I thought it was interesting, though. I did appreciate, though, the fact that when they had Tamako turning to Ochaku, you get a chance to hear Lucy Christian's voice as Ochaku, because technically the way Ochaku does appear in this episode, though, it appears as a mask for, well, Tamako. So I thought that was really good touch on the part of the people who were whoever, I think it was Conclave Beard. I believe it. She, of course, I think it was definitely a good choice. Because, yeah, Ochaku appeared in the episode, so why not have her basically reprise her role for this one appearance? Even though she technically doesn't really appear in the actual episode, just appears as a mask for Tamako. Have Lucy Christian there is fantastic. Now, the other characters appear in the episode are not that big known characters. There's a really weird moment here. Curious basically having Himiko across her lap, like she's basically like Mary with Jesus. I thought was really weird the fact they actually did that. But yeah, not much else to say about this episode. Good. Can't wait for next week. Okay, so that's it for Cyclo View. Oh, by the way, they actually, when they did opening titles, because it was really cool. A lot of people were expecting this. They actually retitled the anime for this one arc, My Villain Academia. Just like they did with the manga. Yep. So yes, that's it for Cyclo View. Next one is going to be One Piece. And in case closed and Boruto, then that's it. And I'll probably go back to doing Super Sentai after that, okay? Next video. Bye.